We have done plenty of stories, Pat, about small numbers of people owning ridiculous portions of the world's wealth. Last year, it was reported that there were 8 men who owned what was equal to the wealth of about half the world's population. Last year, it was reported that 6 men owned an amount of wealth equivalent to the poorest half of the world's population. As of this month, 5 men own almost as much wealth as half the world's population. This is a story about worsening inequality. This is a story about a situation, a status quo that is really bad for the economy. And this is all based on a new Oxfam study of data from all of 2016. The poorest 50% of the world's population owns about $410 billion in total wealth. And as of June 8th of this year, 5 men collectively own more than $400 billion in wealth, roughly the same. On average, each of those men owns as much wealth as 750 million people. The American economic system and the wealth inequality that it produces are a major part of the problem. In 2016 alone, the richest 1% of Americans shifted nearly $4 trillion in wealth away from the rest of the country. Half of that wealth came from the poorest 90% of the United States. And when we hear from the right, Pat, and the supply siders and the voodoo economics supporters, or whatever you want to call them, they say we're against redistribution of wealth. We don't want welfare because it redistributes from the rich to the poor. We don't want mandates for health insurance because it redistributes subsidies from the rich to the poor. What we are seeing in terms of our fundamental economic system and the stock market, as we've talked about with economist Richard Wolff, is redistribution of wealth, but the opposite way, from the poor to the rich. And the 1%ers generally don't seem to have a problem with that.
Yeah, and they seem to get a pass on it, too, because, of course, with all that money, you can do a lot of good. So you have the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
Sure.
You have these great charitable works that they do.
So some people will hear what I say, and they'll say, well, but David, this is good news. America's the best. We've got the best rich people, truly tremendous rich people in our country. This is not a good thing, as Pat is pointing out. But forget about it being bad morally. That's very subjective. It's bad economically, and it's bad for everyone. You need, for business to function, you want the largest number of people possible able to afford the goods and services produced by those businesses. When you see this redistribution of wealth to the top 1% or higher, you end up with fewer people able to afford to go out and buy stuff. Not to mention that it is widely known that at a purely technical level, inequality leads to more criminality. And from an economic standpoint, more criminality is not good for the economy. When you have to invest money in enforcing the law because more people are committing crimes, that's also not a good thing economically.
And the irony here is that it's perhaps in the best interest of the rich to support social programs and some sort of progressive tax rate, because if there's inequality to an extent that it creates some sort of unrest, that's not going to be very good for them. I mean, you have to support things, maybe even in the future, like a universal basic income.
It's obvious. And being exposed to the wealth inequality that exists is only going to exacerbate what Pat is talking about. So we've got wealth inequality continuing to grow in the U.S. We've got American children now with a lower average quality of life compared to their parents, according to a April 2017 study from Harvard, Stanford, and Berkeley. And the healthy diet divide in the United States is growing too. The diets of people with higher incomes are getting better, while people at the bottom are less and less able to afford healthy food, based on a recent study that uses the American Heart Association's guidelines to define healthy food. There are those who will hear all of this and say, David, we live in a meritocracy. People deserve the money that they have, and people have the money that they deserve because of what they produce for society. That's not true either. The truth is that a great deal of those in the 1% are involved with finance, the financial services industry, and they are producing nothing. And I'm not saying that to be insulting, Pat. I'm not saying these are bad people. I have many friends in that industry. Economic study after economic study has determined that the fruits of the financial industry in terms of the benefits to the economy at large are almost nothing in terms of what they are providing to the economy. They are by and large enriching the people in the industry at the expense of those who are disadvantaged by this upward redistribution of wealth.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that the richest of the rich deserve everything that they have because they're all self-made and they earned it
Right.
isn't necessarily true when you have families like the Waltons who just inherited their wealth.
So the Waltons own half
Or
of
40%.
40 to 50% of what the American economy
Yes.
is, the poorest half of the American economy. And then you've got these 5 men who own the same amount of wealth as the poorest 50% of the entire world. And many of the billionaires that we sometimes consider to be sort of like innovators are businessmen like, Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg and Jeff Bezos. They get credit for creating technology that would have been created anyway, or were created partially through our tax dollars, through corporate subsidies, through universities, et cetera. And this is not to take away from their success in any way, but the idea that they are self-made completely independently of the commons and of shared resources and of taxpayer money, you're living in a fantasy world if that's what you believe. So we need reform in a number of ways. We need tax fairness. We need to really go after these attempts from particularly Republicans in the House and Senate to gut regulations like Dodd-Frank, which will further empower Wall Street. We need more oversight for financial markets in general, probably a stronger Volcker rule as well, enlarging the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And if the private market is failing to provide jobs and growth, and the job market is suffering, why wouldn't the government apply monetary and fiscal policies that would help to bolster employment? And we could go on, and I've talked about it for a while. Where are Democrats on a lot of these issues? We hear almost nothing from too many Democrats, the pathetic corporate Democrats who are not out there every day talking about we've got to get health care for everybody. People need to stop making employment decisions based on losing health care, for example. I could go on and on. I don't want to go off on a tangent, Pat, but Democrats have got to get it together. And part of this is Democrats were elected by the same status quo that Republicans were elected.
Yeah, and another part of this, too, is some of the richest of the rich support Democrats. You have people like Michael Bloomberg or Warren Buffett who
Sure.
are somewhat liberal.
That's good. And it's good to point that out because we need to understand that it's not just Republicans are the rich and the rich are for Republicans, but also that on many issues, including those of how politics are financed, we've got to be criticizing Democrats as much as we're criticizing Republicans, or almost as much if that's what they deserve. And by and large, it is. Talk about this with us on our Reddit discussion forum at davidpakman.com/Reddit. Today's program is made possible in part by Gamefly, which is sort of like Netflix for video games. They've got over 8,000 new and classic games for Xbox One, Xbox 360, PS4, PS3, Wii, and a bunch of other platforms. And you can also stream games. You don't even need a gaming console or a computer because you can stream games through your Amazon Fire Stick or Roku box and then use your mobile phone as the controller. You can play as many games as you want for one monthly fee. And if you find some games you want to keep, you can buy them for a low used price, never with due dates or late fees. And our audience can get a 30-day free trial at gameflyoffer.com/TDPS. The games are shipped directly to you with return envelopes included, no contracts, and you can also stream the games. I think I mentioned that. You can also rent games through the mobile app. Get a free 30-day trial for David Pakman Show viewers and listeners and support our show at gameflyoffer.com/TDPS.